Welcome back. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meeting over an historic victory over Iran during a White House meeting Monday. But some Israeli and American officials are warning Iran still wants to obtain a nuclear weapon despite the damage done to its top facilities. Exactly what I spoke about with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday at the Blair House in Washington. Watch. Do you believe that Iran has hidden any enriched uranium?
Well, we think we know where it is. It's sort of buried underground. And we don't have contrary information.
How close were they to the bomb?
I think within a year they would have had.
Within a year?
Within a year, probably more than one bomb. So that would have been, and they say openly, death to Israel, death to America. They, unlike other nuclear powers, they could probably throw that weapon at us, and that's the end of Israel and the end of Jewish history. That's not going to happen. We couldn't allow it. But the other lump of cancer that we had was ballistic missiles. They were going to have a manufacturing capability of 300 ballistic missiles a month. That's within 5 years, they would have had 20,000. And if we didn't destroy their manufacturing capability, that's worth like 2 atom bombs on a country the size of New Jersey, Israel. So we had to act. If we didn't act, we die.
Joining me now is Foundation for Defense of Democracies Iran Program Senior Director and Senior Fellow Behnam Ben Taleblu. Behnam, thank you very much for being here. Your reaction to what you heard from the Prime Minister?
It's a pleasure to be with you. Listen, I think the Prime Minister was rightly justifying both the conventional and asymmetric military threats that the Islamic Republic poses not just to Israel, but to regional security as well as to U.S. forces in the region. Iran, even before this conflict, had the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. Last year, the Islamic Republic made history not once, not twice, but 3 times as a non-nuclear state, firing ballistic missiles at nuclear-armed countries, twice Israel, once Pakistan. And I don't think Israel or the United States would or should have waited for the Islamic Republic to get the bomb and gamble again.
Right. So what do you assess is their capability now, Iran's capability?
Well, certainly there's an unfortunate political debate here in Washington, where I live and work, about the battle damage assessment, meaning what's left of Iran's nuclear program. How much away is it squirreled underground? How much of it may have been diverted? What kind of manufacturing capability for centrifuges does the regime still have? I'll tell you this, so long as there's an Islamic Republic of Iran, particularly one led by an 86-year-old ideologue named Ayatollah Khamenei, that regime is going to want a nuclear weapon. So Washington is going to have to move from counter-proliferation to counter-regime because that's the real success to peace in the Middle East, going after the arsonists, not just the fires.
I mean, do you think we'll ever see peace with that regime in place? I mean, that's one issue that I don't think that President Trump and his team really want to be dictating whether or not there's a new regime. I mean, the president said, this is not our goal to take out the regime. So how will we ever expect that there will be different treatment of the people if, in fact, the regime is the same?
Well, it's critical that the President Trump, as well as his administration, which has gotten so much right in the Middle East, also understand this, which is that there is a huge difference, in fact, a sea of difference between foreign-imposed regime change and foreign-supported regime change. The regime change wars that President Trump and his staff rightly have critiqued, like Afghanistan, like Libya, like Iraq, for example, those are the cases where the U.S. has gone in and essentially failed. Those are cases where you don't have a 100-year social history of the population seeking to get their own government out of the way to get actually a democracy in their capital. That is the facts on the ground when it comes to Tehran. You have the most pro-American, pro-Israeli population in the heart of the Muslim Middle East. If you can flip that, that can actually allow the U.S. to push away from the Middle East and pivot to dealing with the other threats that the Trump administration is rightly prioritizing, like China.
I mean, exactly. And I think that's what the Trump administration understands is the longer-term, bigger threat. But even as, you've got Iran weakened, just days ago, they came out with another, fatwa on President Trump's back. And I asked Netanyahu about this as well. This is a religious edict from the Ayatollah calling on Muslims to take out President Trump. So, are we supposed to expect that the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is going to go have meetings now with Iranian officials even after that?
Oh my goodness, Maria, I've been tracking the whole host of fatwas, religious, political, military commentary coming out of the Islamic Republic for quite some time now, and they are both directly and indirectly threatening the life of President Trump on a near daily, if not sometimes twice daily basis. You have advisors to the Supreme Leader talking about drones being able to strike President Trump's belly button, him not being able to sunbathe in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, this regime remains the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, not just by its actions, but also by its rhetoric. It can't quite literally help itself on a near daily basis. It is issuing these death threats against Trump, and I think our commander-in-chief should not forget that.
Right, and these are real. I mean, this is very serious. And you know, Iran's foreign ministry is now denying that it ever requested to meet with the United States. Behnam.
That's just, you know, some politicking that the regime is doing. They know they're down, but they know they're not out. They have a little bit of juice left in them, and what they're trying to do is take a battlefield loss and turn it into a political success, because unfortunately, as you know, in the Middle East, whether you're a foreign leader or a domestic leader, that region is littered with military victories that have failed to be translated into political victories. And what the Islamic Republic is trying to do now is to stop an Israeli and an American military victory from becoming an Israeli and an American political victory.
The Prime Minister also meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson on Capitol Hill before a second meeting with President Trump yesterday on the potential for a ceasefire and peace in the region. Watch this.
Our common alliance roared like thunder, and this is having a great change in our region. There are opportunities for peace that we intend to realize. We're working together on this. We have still to finish the job in Gaza, release all our hostages, eliminate and destroy Hamas's military and governance capabilities, because Gaza must have a different future for our sake, for everyone's sake. And no country will settle for less. We certainly will not. The coordination between an American president and an Israeli prime minister has been unmatched. It offers great promise for Israel, for America, for our region, and for the world.
Behnam, your thoughts?
Two things. One, if you're an American adversary, be it a state actor or a non-state actor in the Middle East, this increased coordination, this singing from the same sheet of music, both technically and politically, from the U.S. president as well as the Israeli prime minister, is basically a death blow, because for too long our adversaries in the region have tried to count on a daylight or dissonance or difference between Israel and America. And when those two are singing from the same sheet of music, you know the bad guys have a lot to worry about in the region. So that's one. The second is, of course, it's crucial for the Israelis to make sure that not just one side of the aisle, but really all sides of the American political spectrum continue to see the relationship as something bipartisan and working and investing in long term to make sure that no ally, or no adversary, I should say, can exploit that gap in the Middle East.
Well, it certainly has been an extraordinary couple of weeks, certainly for Israel as well as the United States, led by our Commander-in-Chief, Donald Trump. Behnam, thank you so much for being here. Behnam Ben Taleblu, thank you, sir.